It was getting dark when he drove along the quiet road that curved past the small park. The streetlights were just flickering on one after another, and a light mist hung in the air. He had just finished a long day at work and was heading home, thinking about nothing more than dinner and sleep. The city was calm that evening, almost too calm, until something caught his eye near the edge of the park. At first, he thought it was just a small shape, maybe a stray cat or a bundle of clothes someone had dropped. But as he got closer, his headlights revealed something different. It was a little girl, sitting on the cold bench alone, her head buried in her knees, shaking slightly. He slowed down immediately. Something in him couldn't just drive past. He parked the car at the side, turned on the hazard lights, and stepped out. The cool air brushed against his face as he approached slowly, careful not to scare her. "Hey there," he said softly, trying to sound calm. "Are you all right?" The girl didn't answer. She just kept her face hidden. He could hear a quiet sob, the kind that breaks your heart without even trying. He knelt down, keeping a bit of distance so she wouldn't feel threatened. "It's okay," he continued gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." "Are you lost?" The little girl finally lifted her face slightly. She couldn't be more than 7 years old. Her cheeks were wet with tears, her hair a little messy, and her small hands clutched something tightly. A small silver locket. She looked scared but also confused, as if she wasn't sure if she could trust him. "I can help you find your mom or dad," he said. "Do you know where they are?" She just shook her head and whispered, "I don't know." Her voice was tiny, trembling. He tried to think of what to do. The park was almost empty now. Only the sound of distant traffic and the rustle of leaves filled the air. He took out his phone, thinking to call the police, but before he did, he asked softly, "What's your name?" She hesitated, still clutching that locket, then whispered, "Lily." "That's a pretty name," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm glad I found you, Lily. Do you know where you live?" She shook her head again, her eyes darting around like she was afraid someone might appear. He didn't want to scare her further, so he crouched beside the bench and said, "All right, here's what we'll do. We'll stay right here until we figure it out. I can call someone to help, okay?" Lily didn't respond, but she didn't run either. That was something. He called the local police and explained the situation. A little girl alone, lost, crying in the park. They said they'd send someone over soon. In the meantime, he offered Lily his jacket because the evening chill was getting sharper. She hesitated, then slowly reached for it, wrapping it around her small shoulders. He sat beside her, keeping a comfortable distance. "You hungry?" he asked. She looked down and whispered, "A little." "I've got some biscuits in the car," he said, smiling gently. "Would you like some?" She nodded faintly. He brought them over, opened the pack, and handed a few to her. She took them carefully, as if not used to accepting help from strangers. He watched her eat quietly, the way children do when they're trying not to cry again. "What's that you're holding?" he asked after a while, nodding toward the locket. She looked at it, turning it in her small hands. "It's my mom's," she said. "She told me never to lose it." He smiled softly. "Then you're taking good care of it." There was a pause. She kept looking at the ground, her lips trembling slightly. Then she whispered, "She told me to wait for her. But she didn't come back." His heart sank a little. "Where did she go?" Lily's eyes filled again. "She said she was going to talk to someone. Then I waited and waited, and she didn't come." He could see how scared she was. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to push her too much. Soon, 2 officers arrived, one male, one female. They were kind and careful, speaking softly to Lily, asking her basic questions. But something was odd. When they checked the system for missing child reports, there was no record of a girl named Lily, matching her description. No alerts, no photos, nothing. That worried him. The female officer turned to him. "Thank you for staying with her," she said. "We'll take her to the station for now until we can find her parents." He nodded, though something in him didn't feel right. "Can I come along? Just to make sure she's okay?" The officers exchanged a look, then agreed. At the station, they gave Lily a blanket and some warm milk. She stayed quiet most of the time, only speaking when asked something simple. The officers tried tracing her fingerprints but found no record in the database. She was like a ghost, a child who didn't seem to exist on paper. He stayed nearby, watching as she drew something on a notepad the officers gave her. She wasn't doodling randomly. She was drawing a large house with tall gates and a fancy garden. There was a woman beside it, dressed elegantly, and a little girl, clearly her. When the officer asked who the woman was, Lily said quietly, "My mom." "Do you remember where this house is?" the officer asked. Lily frowned and shook her head. "It's big, with many windows. There are people in black suits who stand outside." That detail made everyone exchange glances. It sounded like she lived in a mansion, maybe someone wealthy or famous. He couldn't help asking softly, "Does your mom work a lot?" Lily nodded. "She talks to many people on the phone. Sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm asleep." The room fell silent for a moment. The officer tried calling nearby departments and local shelters, but still, no match. Hours passed. The clock ticked toward midnight. The man felt tired but didn't want to leave yet. Something about this little girl tugged at his heart. He'd never been one to get too involved in strangers' lives, but this felt different. She seemed lost in more ways than one. Not just her location, but emotionally too. He bought her a small cup of hot chocolate from the vending machine and sat beside her again. She smiled faintly this time. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," he said. "You're being really brave, you know that?" She looked up. "You think my mom will come?" He smiled softly. "I'm sure she will. She's probably looking for you right now." He hoped that was true. Not long after, one of the officers walked in and said, "We might have a lead. Someone called in asking if we found a girl who looks like this." He held up a photo on his phone. It was blurry, but the resemblance was clear. Lily's eyes lit up when she saw it. "That's me," she said quickly. The officer nodded and said the caller claimed to be her mother. She was on her way right now. The man felt a wave of relief, but also a strange unease he couldn't explain. About 30 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up outside the station. The doors opened and a tall woman stepped out. She was dressed beautifully, but her expression was pale and tight, like someone who'd been through a storm. The moment she entered the room, Lily ran toward her. "Mom!" she cried, wrapping her arms around the woman's waist. The woman hugged her tightly, trembling. "Oh, thank God," she whispered. "I thought I'd lost you." He stood quietly in the corner, watching the reunion. It should have been heartwarming, and in a way it was. But there was something off. The woman looked over at him, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Her face froze. She stared at him, confusion flashing across her eyes, as if she recognized him from somewhere. The officer introduced them. "This is the man who found your daughter." The woman blinked, trying to compose herself. "Thank you," she said softly. I can't thank you enough." "It's okay," he said simply. "I'm just glad she's safe." But as she spoke, her voice trembled. There was a flicker of fear, or guilt, behind her polished expression. The officers completed the routine paperwork, confirming her identity through ID and a few phone calls. Everything checked out. She really was Lily's mother. Yet even as she took Lily's hand to leave, she turned back one last time. Her gaze lingered on him, uncertain, searching. Then almost in a whisper she said, "Have we met before?" He hesitated, caught off guard. "I don't think so," he said. "At least I don't remember." She nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. They left soon after, the car disappearing into the night. The station went quiet again. He stood by the window, watching the taillights fade into the distance, and couldn't shake off the strange feeling growing inside him. Something about that woman's eyes, the way she looked at him, felt like a memory he couldn't quite reach. And though the night had ended, he knew this wasn't really over. Something deep down told him that what had happened wasn't just coincidence. Somewhere between the park bench and that silver locket, a story was waiting to unfold. One that would change everything he thought he knew about his own past. He couldn't sleep that night. No matter how many times he turned off the light or tried to close his eyes, the image of that little girl sitting on the park bench kept flashing in his mind. Her small face, those tear-streaked cheeks, and the way she held that locket. It all stayed with him. But more than anything, it was the look in her mother's eyes that he couldn't forget. That strange recognition, that split second where it felt like she had seen him before. He got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured himself some water. Outside, the city was quiet. Only the sound of distant cars hummed through the night. He told himself he should move on. He had done his part, helped a lost child get home safely. That should have been the end of it. Still, something about it didn't sit right. The next morning, as he was getting ready for work, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Thank you for last night. I'd like to speak with you in person, please." No name. Just that message. He stared at the screen for a moment, wondering if it was her. Then another message came through. "It's about Lily." That confirmed it. He hesitated but decided to reply. Where and when? She sent a location, a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. A few hours later, he found himself there, sitting by the window, the soft hum of morning chatter filling the air. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. He wasn't sure why he'd come at all. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper he couldn't name. The cafe door opened and she walked in. Even in simple clothes, she carried herself with quiet grace. People glanced at her as she passed. There was something about her presence that drew attention. She spotted him and walked over. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting across from him. He nodded slightly. "I didn't expect to hear from you." She smiled faintly. "I wouldn't have reached out if it wasn't important." The waiter came over and she ordered tea, though she didn't touch it once it arrived. She kept looking at him as if trying to find the right words. "You probably have questions," she said finally. "About last night." "I do," he admitted. "Mostly about Lily. Is she okay?" "She's fine now," the woman said softly. Sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. He felt a bit of relief. "That's good." She seemed scared. The woman's eyes lowered. "Yes, she's been through more than a child should." There was a long pause before she looked up again. "Do you remember me?" He frowned slightly. "No, should I?" "I thought maybe you might," she said quietly. "We met years ago. A long time back." He searched her face again, trying to recall, but nothing came. "I don't think I do," he said honestly. She sighed as if she'd expected that. "It was after a car accident," she said. "You pulled someone out of the wreckage that night." His breath caught for a moment. That memory, one he'd tried not to think about, came rushing back. It had been years ago on a rainy night. A car had flipped over by the riverbank. He had stopped, dragged a young woman from the wreck, and waited for help to arrive. "You were that woman?" he asked slowly. She nodded. "Yes." He stared at her, stunned. "That's unbelievable. I never knew what happened after that. I was in the hospital for weeks," she said softly. "They told me I might not make it. But I did. And I never forgot your face." He sat back, still processing. "I'm glad you're okay. But what does that have to do with Lily?" Her fingers traced the edge of her cup. "Everything," she said. "You see, Lily's not really my daughter." "Not by birth." He froze. "What do you mean?" She looked around, making sure no one was listening, then leaned in closer. "I adopted her when she was just a baby. The adoption was private, through a confidential program that helps children who've lost their families under complicated circumstances." He didn't interrupt, just listened. "I was told she had no surviving relatives," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "that she'd been found near a crash site one night. She was wrapped in a small blanket, wearing a locket, the same one you saw her holding." He felt his heart tighten. "The same locket?" She nodded. "Yes, I was told it was the only thing she had." He stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "You mean she was found after a car crash, the night you were rescued?" Her eyes flickered. "Yes, the same night. Same highway." It felt like the world went silent around them. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "That can't be a coincidence," he said quietly. "I don't think it is," she whispered. "That's why I needed to see you. When I saw you last night, something in me just froze. I knew that face, and I knew it meant something." He rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of it. "So you think the baby they found that night, the one you adopted, could somehow be connected to that accident?" "I'm certain of it," she said. "But I've never known the full truth. The adoption papers were sealed. I wasn't allowed to ask questions. It was all handled by people who preferred privacy." He looked at her, noticing the faint sadness behind her polished calm. "Why are you telling me this now?" She hesitated. "Because Lily has started asking questions. She found some old photos in a drawer, pictures that weren't supposed to be there. She realized she doesn't look like me. She asked who her real parents were." He could imagine how painful that must have been for both of them. "She ran away after I tried to calm her down." The woman continued quietly. I think she went looking for answers. He nodded slowly, understanding more now. That's why she was alone in the park. Yes, she whispered. She probably thought I'd lied to her forever, he sighed. Kids see things in black and white. They don't understand the reasons adults hide certain truths. She nodded sadly. I just didn't want her to get hurt, or dragged into something dangerous. Dangerous, he repeated. She looked down. Let's just say, there are people who wouldn't want this story coming out. He studied her face carefully. There was fear there, real fear. Who are these people? He asked. She shook her head. You don't need to get involved. You already did enough. I just wanted to tell you the truth because you were part of it, whether you knew it or not. He wanted to argue, but she was already standing up, pulling on her coat. Before she left, she looked back at him. Thank you again for what you did that night, both nights. You saved me then, and you saved her now. And just like that, she was gone. He sat there long after she left, watching the steam fade from his untouched coffee. His mind raced. A car crash, a baby, a lost child holding a locket. The same woman from years ago. It couldn't just be a coincidence. When he got home, he pulled out an old box from his closet. Inside were newspapers and small things he'd kept from that night. The article about the accident, the police report he'd filed as a witness, and even a photo of the wreck. He read the details again carefully. The accident had happened about 7 years ago. A man and a woman had been in the car. The woman, the one he'd rescued, had survived. The man hadn't, but nowhere did the report mention a baby. That made no sense. He looked at the date again. Same night, same location. If what she said was true, Lily must have been found shortly after the crash, but by whom? And why wasn't it in any official report? The next day, he went to the local records office to check public archives. The clerk there, an older man with glasses, helped him search. There's not much here, the clerk said after a while. That case was handled quietly. Some pages are sealed. Sealed? He asked. Yeah, the man said, lowering his voice. Usually happens when wealthy families are involved, or when someone wants a story to disappear. He thanked the clerk and left, his mind even heavier. That evening, as he sat alone, he received another message. This time it wasn't from her. It was from an unknown number again, but the tone was different. Stop asking questions. Some things are better left buried. He froze, staring at the screen. Someone knew he was looking. He immediately tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. His chest tightened. He didn't scare easily, but this felt different. He was in the middle of something he didn't understand yet. As the night grew deeper, he walked to the window looking out over the street. A black car he didn't recognize was parked near his building. The headlights flicked on for a moment, then turned off again. He stepped back slowly, uneasy. His thoughts went straight to Lily. And her mother. If someone was watching him, were they watching them too? He didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. The truth was out there, buried under secrets, and for some reason, it was tied to him in ways he couldn't yet explain. He sat down, stared at his phone, and whispered to himself, what really happened that night? And somewhere in the city, that same black car started its engine and drove away into the dark, leaving behind more questions than answers. The next morning, he woke with a heaviness in his chest. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily, about her mother, and about the strange warning message he had received. Whoever had sent it clearly knew he was investigating. That made him uneasy, but it didn't stop him. In fact, it made him more determined. He needed answers. He decided to start with what he knew for certain: the woman who claimed to be Lily's mother, the night of the accident years ago, and the connection between the two. He needed to see her again, to understand everything she hadn't told him. By mid-morning, he found himself back at the cafe where they had met the day before. He waited, sipping coffee and glancing at the door every few seconds. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, she walked in, carrying herself with the same quiet grace, though her eyes were tired. You came back, she said, surprised but not upset. I need to know the truth, he said simply. Everything about Lily, about that night and why she was alone. She hesitated, as if weighing how much to reveal. It's not simple, she said finally. Some of it is my responsibility, some I didn't even fully understand until recently. He nodded. Then start from the beginning. She took a deep breath. After the accident, I stayed in the hospital for weeks. You saved my life that night. I don't think I ever thanked you properly. You did, he said softly. I was just glad you were alive. She looked down at her hands. I should have done more, but I was weak, scared, and everything after that was a blur. I had no one I could trust completely. Then I was approached by people who offered to help me, but only if I followed their instructions exactly. They said it was for the safety of a child I didn't even know existed yet. He leaned forward. A child? Yes, she whispered. Lily, he swallowed hard. Go on. They told me about a baby found near the crash site. She had no known family. Someone had to take care of her. They offered me a choice. I could adopt her privately, away from the public, away from anyone who might try to take her or hurt her. They said I'd need to keep her identity hidden, protect her from people who wanted to keep the truth buried. He was stunned. So Lily was found the same night you were in the accident? She nodded. Yes, and I think she was somehow connected to you too. He frowned. Connected to me? How? She looked up, eyes searching his. I don't know for certain, but you were involved in that night saving me, and the people who arranged the adoption, they were very careful about whom they trusted. They wanted someone who could handle this. And somehow, that brought us all together. He felt a chill. The pieces were starting to come together, but it was still murky. So you adopted her? Kept her safe and never told anyone. But why did she run away? Her voice cracked. Because she found out. She's smart more than I realized. She found old photos, some letters I hadn't meant for her to see. She realized something was hidden from her. And she didn't trust me. She thought I was lying. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. She ran away because she wanted the truth, the woman said, her voice low. And now, I think the truth is about to come out anyway. What do you mean? He asked. I mean that there are people who don't want anyone knowing what happened that night. People who have power, influence. They want Lily to stay hidden. They don't care about her, only about keeping certain events buried. I've tried to protect her all these years, but I can't hide everything forever. He felt a knot tighten in his stomach. So that warning I got, it's connected to them? She nodded. Yes, they watch everything. They wouldn't want you asking questions, he swallowed. Then what do we do? Do we just stop? She shook her head. No, we need to know the truth. Lily deserves to know who she really is. And I think you're part of that truth too. He looked at her, puzzled. Me, how? Because you were there that night, she said. You saved my life. And maybe unknowingly, you saved more than mine. You saved the person who would become Lily's connection to her real family. He took a moment to absorb that. So, Lily might be related to me? She didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window, lost in thought. I don't know how to say this, she whispered. I've been protecting a secret for years, thinking it was right. But now, I think it's time you knew everything. He leaned closer. Please, tell me. She took a deep breath and began. Lily, she's your daughter. The words hit him like a physical blow. His mind spun. My what? Your daughter, she repeated gently. The baby found that night. She was your child. You didn't know. No one told you. But it's true. He shook his head, unable to comprehend. That's impossible. How could I not know? Because the people who arranged the adoption wanted to protect her, she explained. Your girlfriend, the one who died in the accident, she was her mother. When she passed, the baby was placed under my care, hidden from those who might use this knowledge for their own gain. I've been keeping her safe ever since. He closed his eyes, trying to imagine it. The little girl from the park, the one clutching the locket, was his daughter. The woman he had rescued all those years ago had been entrusted to protect her. Why didn't you tell me before? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I was afraid, she admitted. I didn't know how you would react. I didn't want to destroy the life you had, and I didn't want to put her in danger. I thought, maybe one day when the time was right, I would tell you. He ran his hands through his hair, feeling a mix of shock, guilt, and disbelief. And now? Now, she said, her voice steady but soft. The truth can't stay hidden. Lily knows some of it already, and she deserves to know the rest. And you deserve to know your daughter. He couldn't speak. His mind raced through memories he had buried. The accident, the hospital, the missing pieces of his life. And now here was the missing piece staring him in the face, a little girl who had been lost in more ways than one. She ran away because she wanted answers, the woman said. And now that she's found you, you have a choice. You can step into her life or step back, but the choice is yours. He looked down at the table, struggling to find words. The idea of being a father, now after all these years, was overwhelming. He wanted to run, to deny it, but a part of him knew he couldn't. He owed it to her and to himself to face the truth. I want to meet her, he said finally, his voice trembling. I want to see her again, she nodded. Good, but we have to be careful. There are people who don't want this to happen. People who might try to take her again if they think she's at risk. That's why I wanted to speak to you first. We need a plan. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility. I don't care. I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. She's my daughter, and I won't let anything happen to her. She studied him, a faint smile breaking through her tension. I was hoping you'd say that. They spent the next few hours planning how to reunite him with Lily safely. He learned more about her life, the rules she had been living under, and the careful balance she had been forced to maintain. He realized that the little girl in the park, the one he had comforted, had lived a life far more complicated than any child should. By the time they left the cafe, the sun had started to set. He walked slowly to his car, his mind buzzing with thoughts and emotions. Soon he would see his daughter again, not as a stranger who had wandered into his life, but as the child he had unknowingly lost and now had the chance to know. He glanced back once. She was watching him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and worry. He nodded, silently promising her that he would do everything to keep Lily safe. That night he couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't just worry keeping him awake. It was hope. Hope that he could finally step into the life of the little girl who had been waiting for him, the life he had never known he had. And somewhere, not far away, Lily slept, clutching her locket, unaware that her father was already searching for a way to protect her and welcome her into the truth of her life. The days that followed were a blur of questions, planning, and quiet fear. He couldn't stop thinking about Lily. The little girl he had found crying in the park was his daughter, a truth that felt impossible yet undeniable. He wanted to see her, to hold her, to tell her everything, but he also knew it had to be done carefully. The woman who had been caring for Lily, her guardian, protector, and the one who had kept the secret all these years, insisted on caution. We can't just walk into her life, she warned. There are people who have been watching, controlling, and keeping things hidden for a reason. You don't want to put her in danger, he nodded, understanding her concern, yet he couldn't ignore the urgency in his chest. He had lost time, years he would never get back, and he wanted to make every moment count from now on. Together, they began piecing together the fragments of Lily's past. They visited old hospital records, digging through archives and reports that had been sealed. Every page brought a small revelation. She had been found wrapped in a small blanket near the site of the crash. The locket she carried had been her mother's, a simple silver chain with a tiny photograph inside. The hospital had no record of her biological father, only a woman's name, the one he had rescued. Why keep all this hidden? He asked one evening, staring at the faded paperwork. Because some people wanted it hidden, she replied softly. People with power, influence. People who didn't want Lily connected to anyone they couldn't control. He frowned. And they still exist? Yes, she said. They watch. They make sure secrets stay buried. That's why I've been so careful all these years. He ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed. So all this, it's bigger than just us. Bigger than her running away or me finding her. There's more at stake than I realized, she nodded. Exactly. And now that you know, we have to be careful. We need to understand who is involved and why Lily was hidden in the first place. That night he couldn't sleep. Every sound in his apartment seemed louder, sharper. His phone buzzed, but it was an unknown number again. He didn't answer. Whoever it was, he didn't want to alert them. The next day he started his own quiet investigation. He revisited the accident site, hoping to find clues that had been overlooked. The highway where the crash had occurred was still the same. A quiet bend surrounded by trees. But he noticed things he hadn't before. Tire marks that suggested a struggle. Small scraps of debris tucked into the bushes. A faint shadow of something that might have been overlooked by authorities years ago. He took photos, made notes, and then visited the local police station to see if old files could be accessed. The clerk was reluctant at first, citing sealed documents and confidentiality, but his persistence paid off. He was allowed to see redacted reports, enough to piece together the basic events of that night. As he read through the reports, he discovered something disturbing. The crash hadn't been an accident. At least that was what some of the notes implied. There were references to another car that might have been involved, a car that fled the scene before the police arrived. Witnesses had mentioned seeing a black vehicle, similar to one he had noticed parked near his building recently. His heart raced. Could this be connected to Lily's disappearance? Had someone tried to cover it up from the very beginning? He met with the woman again, showing her what he had found. Her face turned pale. "I feared as much," she admitted. "There were always rumors, but I didn't want to believe them. Some people wanted to erase every trace of what happened that night, and they succeeded. Until now." He clenched his fist. "So this is why she was hidden?" "They didn't want anyone to know the truth, not me, not Lily." "Yes," she said. "And that's why we have to be careful. You can't just walk into her life without understanding what we're up against." They agreed to meet Lily in a controlled environment. He didn't want to overwhelm her. He wanted to approach her gently, let her see him as someone she could trust. But even planning this was difficult. They had to choose a safe location, one without prying eyes, cameras, or anyone who might be watching. Finally, they decided on a small, quiet park where Lily had once spent time before, one she felt safe in. The plan was simple. Meet her there, let her recognize him slowly, and begin a conversation that would not frighten her. The day of the meeting arrived. He felt a mixture of excitement and fear. What if she didn't accept him? What if she was angry, scared, or confused? He practiced what he would say, how he would act. But nothing could truly prepare him for the reality of facing his daughter after so many years. When they arrived, Lily was already there, sitting on the same bench he had found her at months ago. She looked smaller than he remembered, fragile yet full of life. She clutched her locket, eyes wide as she saw him approach. "Hi, Lily," he said softly, keeping his distance. "It's me. I'm the man who—" "Well, I think you know me now." Her eyes flickered with recognition, but also caution. She didn't move. "It's okay," he said, smiling gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. I wanted to meet you, to say hello, and maybe to tell you something important." She tilted her head, curious but still wary. "My name is—" He paused, searching for words. "I'm your father." The words hung in the air. Lily froze, eyes wide, staring at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then slowly, she opened her small hand and showed him the locket. "This was my mom's," she whispered. "I know," he said softly. "And she was very brave. She made sure you were safe, and now, I want to be part of your life too, if you'll let me." Tears welled in her eyes. She looked at the woman who had brought her here, the guardian who had protected her for years, then back at him. "Really?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Really." The first steps were small. They sat together on the bench, talking slowly. He told her stories about her mother, about the day she was born, and about how much he had wanted to meet her all these years. He didn't overwhelm her with too many details, but enough to let her know she was loved. She listened, eyes wide, hands clutching the locket. For a long time, no words came, only quiet understanding. Then she whispered, I'm glad you found me." He smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "I'm glad I did too." But even as the moment felt tender and right, the shadow of danger loomed. The woman who had been protecting Lily looked around nervously. "We can't stay long," she whispered. "They might be watching." He nodded, understanding the urgency. They packed up slowly, making sure to stay alert. He could feel eyes on them, though he couldn't see from where. The people who had hidden Lily all those years were still a threat. Over the next few days, he began learning more about Lily's life. The woman shared documents, letters, and photographs. He discovered that Lily had been living under strict rules to protect her from the powerful people who had orchestrated the cover-up after the crash. She had grown up well-educated, polite, and careful, but also wary of strangers and secretive about her feelings. He realized that his role was not only to be a father, but also to protect her from the world that had hidden her for so long. One evening, as they sat together reviewing old photographs, he noticed something he hadn't before, a newspaper clipping tucked away in a folder. It mentioned a high-profile car accident and hinted at a cover-up involving influential people. He frowned. This is bigger than I thought, he said. Yes, the woman admitted. Much bigger. And that's why they've kept Lily hidden. They didn't want anyone to trace her back to her family, not even you. He felt a mixture of anger and determination. Then we have to uncover the truth, he said. No matter what it takes. Lily deserves to know everything. She nodded, her expression serious. But we have to be careful. They'll try to stop us. He clenched his fists. Then we'll be ready. The following days were spent carefully planning. They mapped out safe routes, monitored their surroundings, and made sure Lily felt comfortable. The little girl began opening up more, asking questions, laughing quietly at small jokes he made. Slowly, he began to see glimpses of the child she truly was, curious, bright and full of life despite the years of secrecy and fear. Evenings were spent talking about the past, about memories he could share, and about the future he hoped to build with her. Each day, their bond grew stronger, but the sense of danger never fully left. He knew that uncovering the full truth about Lily's past and the people who had hidden her would not be easy. But he also knew one thing clearly. He would protect her no matter what. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who had tried to erase Lily's existence were watching, waiting for a misstep. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a moment that would reveal all secrets and change their lives forever. The air was tense the morning he decided it was time. He had spent days preparing, talking with the woman who had protected Lily for years, reviewing old records and making sure every precaution was taken. The little girl had slowly begun trusting him, but he knew this next step would be the most difficult. It wasn't just about meeting her. It was about revealing the full truth, about her past, about her mother, and about him. He picked a quiet park, one where Lily had once felt safe. The sun was soft, filtering through the trees, casting long shadows on the path. He arrived early, pacing slowly, his mind filled with anticipation and worry. What if she reacted badly? What if the truth frightened her? Then he saw her. Lily was sitting on a small bench, her silver locket glinting in the sunlight. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, her eyes wide and cautious. He stopped a few feet away and smiled gently. "Hi, Lily," he said softly. "I promised I'd tell you everything. Would you like to hear it?" She hesitated, clutching the locket tightly. Then slowly she nodded. He sat down beside her, keeping a careful distance. "Do you remember the day we met at the park?" She nodded quietly. "Yes, I was scared. I know," he said gently. "You were. And I want you to know, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just trying to find answers, and that was brave." Her eyes flickered with curiosity. "You're going to tell me now?" He took a deep breath. "Yes, I'm going to tell you everything I know. And I want you to promise me something first, that you'll listen until the end, okay?" She nodded. "You know your mom, the woman who's been taking care of you?" He paused, letting the words sink in. "The one who kept you safe all these years?" "Yes," she said softly. "Well," he continued, "she adopted you after you were found when you were just a baby. You were left alone after a terrible accident, and she made sure you were protected from people who wanted to hurt you or keep you hidden." Lily's small hands trembled as she held the locket. "So, she isn't my real mom?" He shook his head gently. "No, she's been your protector, your guardian. She's kept you safe because some people didn't want the truth to come out, but she did it out of love." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Then who is my real mom?" He looked at her, his heart aching. "Your real mom, she was someone very special. She loved you so much, more than anyone could know. But she died when you were a baby. I didn't know she had a daughter. I never knew." Lily blinked, confusion and curiosity mixing in her gaze. "What do you mean?" He swallowed hard. "I'm your father, Lily." The words hung in the air. Lily stared at him, frozen, her little hands gripping the locket. "What?" she whispered. "I'm your dad," he said gently. "I wasn't there for you before because I didn't know. But I do now, and I want to be part of your life if you'll let me." For a long moment, Lily didn't move. Then she looked at the woman sitting nearby, the one who had cared for her all these years. The woman gave her a small, encouraging nod. Lily turned back to him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Really?" she whispered. "You're my dad?" "Yes," he said softly, reaching out a hand. "I am. And I want to protect you, take care of you, and be with you. You've been brave for so long, and I want to make sure you never have to be afraid again." She hesitated, then slowly reached out and touched his hand. The warmth of the small gesture filled him with a feeling he had never known before. After years of searching, of wondering, he finally felt a connection that was real, unbroken, and full of promise. Can we stay together?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," he said, holding back tears. "We can." They sat in silence for a while, letting the moment settle. The little girl's hand still in his, he felt a wave of relief and joy unlike anything he had ever experienced. This was more than a reunion. This was the start of something new, something real. But even as they shared the moment, the shadow of the past lingered. There were still unanswered questions, still dangers they had to be aware of. He knew the people who had tried to hide Lily's existence were still out there, watching, waiting for a misstep. He looked at the woman who had brought them together. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know how I could have done this without you." She smiled softly, though her eyes were tired. "You're her father. You were meant to find her. I just helped guide you." They spent the next hours talking about the past. He told Lily stories about the night she was born, about her mother, and about the accident. He didn't overwhelm her with details, but enough to help her understand the truth. Each story, each memory, slowly pieced together the life she had never known. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the park, he made a promise to Lily. "I will always be here for you," he said. "No matter what happens, I will protect you. You are my daughter, and nothing can change that." Lily hugged him tightly, resting her head against his chest. For the first time in her life, she felt safe, truly safe. She had found the father she had been missing, and he had found the daughter he had longed for. Over the next few days, they began the slow process of building a routine together. He introduced her to the small joys of life he had taken for granted, baking cookies, reading bedtime stories, taking walks in the park. She was cautious at first, but gradually her laughter returned, her trust grew, and the bond between them strengthened. The woman who had protected her all those years remained close, guiding both of them, helping Lily adjust to the new reality of having a father she had never known. She knew the threats were not gone, but with both of them united, she felt confident they could face whatever came next. One evening, as they sat together looking at the old photographs of her mother, Lily asked softly, "Did she know you would find me someday?" He shook his head. "I don't think so. She probably hoped, but she didn't know for sure. But I think she would be proud. She would be proud of how brave you are, and how much you've grown." Tears filled Lily's eyes again. "I miss her." "I know," he said, holding her close. "I miss her too. But we can honor her by living our lives fully, by being there for each other." They spent the evening talking, sharing memories, and laughing quietly. The past was painful, but the present offered hope. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape together. Then, one day, the woman who had guided Lily came to him with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something," she said. "There are still people who don't want this truth revealed. They might try to interfere even now." He nodded. "I understand. But nothing will stop me from being her father, nothing." Together, they took precautions, ensured safety, and continued to rebuild Lily's life. She began to understand the full story of her past, and with every new detail, her trust in him grew. She began to call him Dad without hesitation, and he reveled in the small, ordinary joys of being part of her life. One afternoon, as they walked through the park where it all began, Lily stopped and held up the silver locket. "This was my mom's," she said softly. "And now? It belongs to both of us, right?" "Yes," he said, smiling. "It belongs to both of us, and it always will." For the first time in years, the past no longer felt like a burden. The secrets, the danger, the lost years, they were still there, but they no longer defined them. What mattered now was the love they shared, the trust they had built, and the bond that could never be broken. He looked at Lily, her small hand in his, and felt a sense of peace he had never known. The journey had been long, filled with fear, mystery, and pain, but it had led him here, to her. His daughter, his family. And somewhere far away, the woman who had protected her all these years watched from a distance, a small smile on her face. She had kept a secret for so long, but now, finally, the truth had found its way home. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the park. Father and daughter walked hand in hand, ready to face the world together. The past could not touch them anymore. The future was theirs to create, filled with love, trust, and the unbreakable bond they had discovered at last. For the first time, he felt whole, and Lily, finally, felt safe. The end.